Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. I'm Terry Lipshetz, a senior producer at Lee and co-host of the program with Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal and a longtime entertainment reporter. Bruce, I want to pass you a note. I've got some secrets. Do you have any secrets? Can you share anything?
Yeah, send me a text, okay? That might be the best. In the old days, spies were so much different because they would sit on a park bench and they'd pass an envelope between each other, right?
Right.
Now, it's like we're hacking into systems and you notice how they always have that clock that counts down until the file is uploaded? And it's like, oh, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Well, all you had to worry about was, did somebody grab the envelope or are you just letting it go? So it is a different world, and there's a new mini series or limited series, whatever you want to call it, that has been airing in Great Britain already, and it got huge reviews. They loved it over there. It's called A Spy Among Friends, and we're getting it now on MGM Plus, and it is the sort of true story of Kim Philby. You probably have never heard of Kim Philby at all, but he was a traitor to Great Britain. He was a spy, but he was getting information for Russia. And when they found out that he was defecting to Russia, they sent his friend to try and talk to him about all of this. And would you keep this information? I don't know how I could ever be a spy because I talk too much. And I think I would tell too much. But that your best friend could not guess that you were going to be a traitor. And, wouldn't you have dropped some kind of message about this? I find that just really hard to believe. Yeah. But yeah, and that was a big scandal in the 60s. And people remember the name Kim Philby because he was this traitor who went to Russia. And he was very well known. Today, it doesn't graze the radar. People really don't know who he is or who his friends were. But the film, which kind of looks at the class system that's very popular in Great Britain, tries to explain all of that by that, because there was a group of young men who thought that they were, if you will, better than other people because they went to the right schools, they had the right majors, they had the right connections, their parents were probably somebody. And as Damian Lewis says, they dabbled in communism. And so they thought that this was kind of a cool thing that we could do, and they wouldn't be caught for anything like this. Well, Kim Philby didn't just dabble. He was doing a little bit more with all of that. And I got a chance to talk to Guy Pearce, who plays Kim, and he was talking about acting as a spy. How much acting is involved with all of that? Do you feel you need to pretend all the time? And he said this class system is something that it didn't matter. You didn't have to do that because they just accepted whatever you were doing was just temporary, and they were allowed to do that. And he and the creator of the series, Alexander Carey, talk about how this is kind of important again today because we're seeing a class system that's being created in just all parts of the world, where some people think they're above the law and they don't have to worry about consequences, and then others who don't seem to be able to catch a break no matter what.
That's fascinating. What's your general thought on spy movies and TV shows in general? Do you enjoy them? Do you get sucked in?
Oh, you know it. It's strange how something like James Bond has changed so drastically, because in those early days, with Sean Connery, maybe Roger Moore, who they did a lot of things that was, they were just conversational. That's how they got their information. And then they started getting all those toys. And then they started having gadgets and, come on, where do you find all this stuff? And how would you be able to create all this? And then you have all these kind of hench people. How do you keep anything from somebody else that they wouldn't know? Today, it's so over the top. Look at how, it takes several years for somebody like Tom Cruise to make one of his spy films. So yeah. It's a different game. I think it's changed, but I think they suck you in all the time because you always wonder, who now is the bad guy? I'm not really sure I know who the bad guy is.
Did you see The Spy a couple of years ago? That was the one. It starred Sacha Baron Cohen, who everybody knows as Borat, but he did a really serious take. He played Eli Cohen, who's a Israeli, and he was spying in the 1960s and ultimately was caught. But it was the true life story, and it was a very serious role for him. But it was a real fascinating look into espionage.
Could you be a spy?
I thought about it. I think I could.
Really?
Be. Yeah.
I don't know how you do that in school, where you say, all right, I'd like to go on the spy track, please. Could I please take those classes that are necessary for that? I couldn't. I know I couldn't, because I can keep a secret, but I don't think I could, like the Americans, I don't know I could do what they did, where you just suddenly assume new identities and live among people for years, and then you're kind of trying to get a little bit of information out to the others. I don't know that I could do that. At some point I would break. And I think where they always go wrong with these kinds of films is they have families.
Right.
And I think a true spy has no connections. That's why you see James Bond is such a good spy, is because he always seems to be a loner. Once they get him with somebody, then it becomes, I've got to worry about somebody killing this person, to get to me. So if you're a spy, you should be a loner.
It never worked out well for James Bond in those movies, because he would either meet someone and they would end up dead, or they would end up turning on him.
Well, could you imagine in this day if you were like Googling pussy galore? I think you could find her. I think you could find her.
They when that movie came out, they released trading cards for that movie.
Did you
and
get
they
them?
No, because I wasn't born back then, Bruce. But they changed the name of that character to Kitty Galore, because we couldn't go that. It's a little too dirty for the kids back in the 60s. So that was always kind of fun. Goldfinger. But yeah, I don't know if I could be a spy. Like it always sounds cool, but then you think about, well, you got all these crazy secrets. You can't settle down with the family. Somebody's going to
keep a secret in your own house. If you've got kids, come on. They know everything.
Work. They do.
Right?
I always wonder too, when watching things like Mission Impossible, that this recording will self-destruct in 10 seconds. But it goes up in flames. Nobody notices that. Nobody sees this like flaming package that's sitting next to you on the train, and it does it not set off a smoke alarm?
For many years, studios would send out DVDs of their films, and they would disintegrate. I mean, after you had watched it once, you couldn't watch it again. And I always thought, well, that's how they should have done that stuff, because a tape recorder that's burning, that's not going to happen.
That might raise a couple of red flags.
Well, and you could never rewind. You never could go back and look at a scene again. You saw it once, it's on your computer, that's it, it's done. Now you can go back to screening links and go back and see things if you want to look at them more than once. But yeah, so the spy world, no. The best thing about me is I couldn't remember anything, because I think I've learned so much in my lifetime. There's so much crap in my head that we have to empty the trash at some point to try and remember these things. So if you put me under oath and had a lie detector and everything hooked up, I'd be good, because I couldn't remember a darn thing that you told me.
Did Guy Pearce talk about at all, like how he researched for this series?
Yes. He did, and it's in the interview. I want you to listen to the interview. He talks about the kind of research he did, and how it would kind of work for him, how he would be as if he could be a spy. So there's a lot of interesting things there. I think you should unpack it. It's not that long. We have Guy Pearce and Alexander Carey talking about a spy among friends. Can a spy really have a friend?
I think friendship is the main currency of spies. I think it's a good question, because on one side of the relationship, yes, that question is pertinent. On the other one, it's pertinent in completely the opposite way.
Yeah, it struck me as if I were a spy, I would not be friendly with anybody. I would just let it go. But there also is an element of acting that's involved. And Guy, would you make a good spy?
Well, look, I may make a good spy, on the surface, but I mean, of course, I can work as an actor on screen, but it's never a life or death situation. I don't know how if I've got the chutzpah to act as well when I know that there are lives or countries or at stake. So probably not, I think, is the answer.
Well, how do spies operate today when there's just so many ways that the truth could come out? Is it a whole different world in a way? Because the 60s is kind of a real romantic period, at least for spies.
Well, I think in the 60s, human intelligence, in other words, human to human, getting information, in sort of bars and on park benches and all the rest of it was a reality. And was the main way of getting and passing information. These days, there's a lot more of sort of cyber espionage and all the rest of it. And I think you'll find that in various intelligence agencies, there are also still two factions. There's the one that goes, well, human intelligence is really the way that you're going to get the definitive stuff, or the stuff that's going to be keep on giving. And then there are people who are going to go, no, let's just put a drone up. So it's very different these days. But going back to the friendship thing is important for a spy.
Yeah, it doesn't seem as much fun, but maybe I'm wrong. Never been a spy, can't weigh in. Guy, how much did you read about him before you actually started doing this? Did you know much about him or not?
I didn't know a lot. No, I mean, I'd seen a couple of films that had been made, and I'd seen a documentary once about the Cambridge Five. So I didn't know a lot. I knew of Kim Philby, of course, but knew no detail about him really, and certainly knew nothing about this relationship between he and Nicholas Elliott. I read a number of books before we started and through the course of making the show. One in particular, I think, was a helpful piece, which was written by Eleanor, his third wife, his American wife, the wife that he was with in Beirut when he left. She wrote a book that looked at some of the letters between the two of them, that published the letters between the two of them through that time. So there was something personal and human about the way she wrote. And so that was an interesting little way in for me into Philby. But yeah, I read bits and pieces of all sorts of things before we started. But of course, I always would come back to the script, and at a certain point, I find I have to sort of let the research material go.
Were there things you could relate to, and did you like him at all or not?
I never know the answer to the liking question, because whilst making, I'm so embedded into him that I lose myself in a way. So it's not necessarily that I have an opinion of him. I'm so sort of lost in trying to just become and understand him. I think the bigger question is whether I understand him, and that's what I'm searching to do through the process, and you can probably only understand any character, this much at the best of times. When you're dealing with someone like Philby, you can probably only understand him this much because he's a mystery to everybody. So it was a complex and challenging process. Yeah.
Well, thank you both. It's been so exciting to watch this unfold. And I'm just playing dumb through the whole thing. I'm not looking ahead to find out anything. I don't want to know anything, but it is fascinating. It's a different world, a different time. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thanks, Bruce.
Nice to meet you.
All right, Bruce, thanks for that interview. Fascinating discussion there. Did you get to talk to anybody else from that series?
Damian Lewis, who plays the friend that has to try and talk to this Kim Philby. I did get to talk to him, and I do have a story. Maybe you can add a link to this, and if you want to read, you'll see some more stuff from him about this whole project. But it's a 6-part limited series on MGM Plus. And Terry, if you do anything this next week that I worry about, I'll know you're a spy.
Sounds good, Bruce. So we'll have a link to that article in the show notes of this episode. And otherwise, we will see you next week with another episode of Streamed and Screened.
Have a great one.